What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, good people of the Retroactive Fantasy Football Nation? It is me, your commissioner, BRENNON, here with the first ever Retroactive Navy League review. I don't know what to call this one. I got the rap recap. I got the Ray review. And I got the Ran. I don't know. We'll have to come up with something. But this is basically going to be a weekly thing if you're new to Retroactive, or if you have been in Retroactive and you haven't heard me say this in any of the other recaps or in the off season. I'm going to start doing individual league reviews on a weekly basis. I'm going to try to keep it to 15-20 minutes. Throw it into the Discord if Discord will allow. I might have to get the Nitro. I don't know. But I'm at least going to put it on Facebook. I'm also going to put it on YouTube. That's what I'm going to do. See? Just figured that out live. I'm going to post it on the YouTube channel that I'm going to create for Retroactive, and then share the link in Discord, as well as put it on Facebook. So you have two different options for viewing these recaps. And along with the individual league recaps, I'm also going to continue the STLs in the evening, which is basically going to just be more interactive, less review or less analyzing league activity. All right. Figuring it out on the fly. We're building this plane as we fly it. So just come fly with me. All right. Retroactive Navy, which, speaking of flying, I didn't know until this year that the Navy has like the highest pilot like numbers, if I've got that correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob Jordan. But I talked to somebody who was considering going into the Air Force, and my naivete, I was just like, okay, that's like all of the pilots in the military branches, right? That come from the Air Force. He was like, no, the Air Force actually has like the least amount of pilots in all of the military branches. And he said, I think he said the Navy had the number one. I don't know. I was trying to make a connection between flying, Navy. I don't know. Anyway, Navy. The inspiration behind this league name was not the military angle, right? I was connecting the previous league structures of like retroactive purple, retroactive yellow. Hey, what's another color? Retroactive navy. And I said navy because Ran has a better ring to it than Rab. Right? Retroactive blue. Rab just doesn't flow the same as Ran. And I really don't even like Ran. So you'll probably hear me say Navy more as a short way of saying Retroactive Navy as opposed to Ran. However you want to do it. But it was inspired by the color navy blue, and then I integrated the military component into it, as you can see reflected in the militaristic division names and some people's team names, right? N for Navy also represents the No Trade League. So if you ever hear me reference the No Trade League and you're in the No Trade League, it's because, or Navy, you know, it just all goes together. All right? I'm tired. All right? For those who don't know, I'm back in school. Been out of school for 12 years. I'm working full time. Dealing with family, dealing with marriage, dealing with personal pursuits. You know what I'm saying? I'm managing 3 leagues. I'm participating in 4. All of them IDP. One of them's keeper. I'm trying to draft up a dynasty league for next year that's really 2 years behind. So, excuse me, I just got a lot going on. And I'm also trying to do media with this stuff and other stuff as well. So forgive me if I seem foggy at times, or if I, just rambling or whatever like I'm doing now. I'm trying to keep it under 5 minutes. But I'm trying to also explain to you what you've stepped into if you haven't been in the retroactive universe before. 3 leagues, Probably going to be 4. This one is the newest. It's just a concept I thought of last year, what it would look like, especially since we have so much trading that has historically happened in retroactive. I said, what would it look like with a league where we can't trade? How would owners fare? How well would they do? Would you be able to survive off your draft or off of whatever wire moves you have to make? And adding in the element of fab use, free agent acquisition budget, which I had never done before. This is my first year doing fab. So all of that in this league has made it very interesting so far through 3 weeks. I want to make a regular habit of doing these reviews for Navy once a week. So I apologize to those who may have been expecting that. I'm going to review the first 3 weeks of the season now. And for all the weeks moving forward, I'll try to do like a 15 to 20 minute review for that specific week, going into a little bit more detail than what I'm going to do today. But we're just going to kick it off by looking at the division standings. We've got Cobalt division, my division. Cobalt, Indigo, Navy, Gloom. Cobalt with a K, so I could make the acronym King. You know what I'm saying? Like that. We are 1 and 2. I'm getting spanked in Navy right now. I was not very confident in my draft. I thought my running backs would fare a little bit better than what they have, considering the offenses that they were in. Zeke being back in Dallas, and DeAndre Swift, highly drafted, being in Chicago. Both of them look terrible thus far through the season. So my running backs, as well as Anthony Richardson, who I should not have drafted, and I did. I think I panicked. I think I was finishing a tennis match. That also might have contributed to it. And I was trying to draft in between like sets or games on my tennis match. Do not recommend. But all that being said, I'm 1 and 2. Deservedly so. In my division, Grounded Jets, who is Robert Sellers. I don't know what your Discord name is. It's 2 and 1 to lead the Cobalt division. BTK Proxies, BTK2 Proxies, which I like the genius behind that name. If you don't know what it means, you should ask Black Rob or Robert Taylor. He is 1 and 2, tied with me in the division standings. And then Majestic 12, who I got my only win against, he is 0 and 3. David's dangerous team belongs to, who is Majestic 12? Let me start with that. Majestic 12 is Walt Gus, who has tried to pop out in the chat a little bit. I appreciate you. Like I said, just once a week, holler at us, say something, just talk. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but just let us know you're breathing and what you think about the week. D Will is David's dangerous team. I don't know why he hasn't changed that team name. It is awful. ESPN gives you horrible suggested team names, and although it is such, he's kept it, and he's kept a 2 and 1 record to be leading the Deep Blue division thus far. Shout out to you for that. Special Weapons and Tactics, SWAT. I didn't know that was the acronym meaning. Also 2 and 1. That is CJ Matthews. Vetonator Supreme. What the hell was that? Heard the noise. Vetonator Supreme is Kevin Grabowski, who morphed into the Vetonator last season or 2 years ago, as all the trades were getting vetoed, comically so. He's 1 and 2 in Deep Blue, and Suicide Squad is 0 and 3. That is Larry Edwards. We got 2 Larrys? No. Larry and Robert Sellers. Larry Edwards is 0 and 3. So we got 2 new guys 0 and 3. That doesn't bode well. I'm 1 and 2. So if I'm 1 and 2 and y'all 0 and 3, I'm telling you, it's not gonna get no easier for you, especially since y'all can't trade. Meanwhile, one of the new owners who is faring well, Dan's Driven Team. Also another horrible team name. I don't know if it's laziness or if it's spite that y'all are keeping these team names. Nevertheless, the two worst team names have the two best records in Retroactive Navy. Dan's Driven Team is 3-0. That is Dan Vandaha. DVH. Big Balls 1988. Who I talked big trash against. He spanked me last week. Pretty bad. I think he had like a 280, 290. We'll get to that. I had like a 130. It's ugly. He's 2-1. Dreams and Nightmares, Cortez Jackson Jr., who is the three-time Retroactive champion, Retroactive Purple Legacy champion. He's 2-1 in the San Diego division. This is what I'm naming. Dan Vandaha. Big Balls 1988, which is Will Schaefer and Cortez Jackson, all in the San Diego division, as well as Harrison Decker, who is 1-2. Too sweet. Best division, second best division in RAN. And finally, the best division in RAN is Pearl Harbor. 3 teams tied for first place with 2-1 records. Mr. Cacafuego. Cacafuego. Christopher Stanky. You got Bell's Battalion in second place, tied for first with the 2-1 record. That's Janine Truesdale. You've got Juan Redman, the Quiet Juan, at 2-1. Negus and Perdition, Nip, Negus and Perdition, NIP, Nip. I get it. And then you've got F Around and Find Out, which is Sip, aka Devon Tingle, at 1-2 in the Pearl Harbor division. So let's get to it. The week 1 standings here, or the week 1 scores. I took my first loss, 220 to 228. I don't even remember that one. I got too many leagues. Never going to do 4 leagues again. Probably not going to do 3. 220 to 228, I took the L. And that was with Anthony Richardson's best game. I just got on the owner in Ray who has Anthony Richardson for his 0-3 start, or I think he was 1-2, and he had Anthony Richardson week 1 and lost. And I'm like, I don't think you're gonna get a better performance out of Anthony Richardson this year. You might get 2 other performances like that from Anthony Richardson, but with his inaccuracy and all the other stuff going on, 36 might be the best I get from him. So I went ahead and threw Kirk Cousins in the starting lineup. Didn't make much of a difference. But I lost that matchup. Will Schaefer, Big Balls, 248 to 209. Almost a 40-point victory over Harrison, Too Sweet. Any significant scores? Not for real. Dan's Driven Team got his first win of 3 with a 218 to 183 victory. That's not too encouraging. It's actually encouraging to me because it means I'm closer than what I thought. But a 218 is one of those 3 wins. See what those other scores is looking like. Dreams and Nightmares, a.k.a. Tez, had the highest score of week 1 with a 292 over the 0-3 Majestic 12, a.k.a. Walt Gus, who had a 229. Not a terrible score, but just a wrong opponent that week. F Around and Find Out got his only win of the season thus far with a 250 against Kevin G, who had a 221. Bell's Battalion won the week 1 matchup, 205 to 175. Another low-scoring affair. D. Will, very, very strong performance, 275 to 203 against Negus in Perdition, a.k.a. the Quiet One. And Mr. Cacafuego, a 6-point win in the matchup of the week between 2 new owners in the Retroactive family. 266 to 260. Mr. Cacafuego over Suicide Squad, a.k.a. Larry Edwards. Saquon being the difference maker in that Monday night game for Mr. Cacafuego to get the win. Wait a second. That Monday night, week 1 was Green Bay versus Philly. Week 1? Monday night? Yeah. Green Bay versus Philly. That was Monday night. Or Sunday night. No, that was Friday. So that was early. That was one of the early games. Never mind. I thought it was like it came down to the wire that week between those two. But they were both the high scoring performers, Saquon and Jaden Reed for Larry. Week 2, I got my only win of the season so far. I put up a 261, which I already forgot that I did that over here, to beat Harrison, a.k.a. Too Sweet, who had a 225. I didn't know I put up a 261. I had Michael McFadden give me 27, Calvin Ridley. Well, I had the guys that are supposed to go off. That's what it was. This current week, and I'll talk about that when I get to that. But CJ got the win in a close matchup against Will Schaefer, Special Weapons and Forces, 242 over Big Balls 1998. Had a 238. 4-point victory, close affair. The only loss of the season for Will. So really good matchup there. Probably one of the matchups of week 2, if not the matchup of week 2. Blowout victory, impressive victory to give Tez his only loss from Dan's driven team, aka Dan Vandaha, 283 to 231. 50-point performance from Kamar, which has been a theme in all the retro leagues in week 2. Whoever had Kamar put up a really good score and probably didn't get much from their roster in the other weeks. It's panned out for Dan, seeing that he's 3-0. Other teams not so much. So I'll be curious to see what his roster composition is as we go forward. Still a solid performance from Tez. James Cook gave him 30, and J.K. Dobbins gave him 23.6. So I know he has some other horses that didn't show up, but 3-time champ. I think he'll figure it out. He'll at least be competitive as he is at 2-1. Black Rob 1-2. This was his only win, a 273 to 195 against Walt Gus, aka Majestic 12. The B2, I would keep wanting to say B2K. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. BTK2 proxies. Really, really good score in week 2. Bell's Battalion got an 8-point victory over SIP in the rap championship rematch over in Ran. Another loss for SIP. And if you don't know anything about what happened in the rap championship from this past season in January of 24, these two owners played in that championship, which rap is the top league thus far in RetroActive. For those who aren't familiar, RetroActive Purple. These two owners played in that championship match in their first championship appearances for both of them, and it came down to the Monday night game in week 17, and I think it was a 0.5 point differential, and there ended up being a stat correction. SIP was supposed to win by 0.5 and ended up getting a stat correction to where he lost, or some variation there. I don't know if he lost by 0.5 or was winning by 0.5 and then got the stat correction. Either way, it was a stat correction involved, and SIP ended up losing the championship on the stat correction. So doesn't seem like he really cares too much. He didn't seem bothered. He is always chilling. Whenever you ask him, whatever you ask him about, whatever you ask him, you ask him what he's doing, he's chilling. So I digress. Thought that matchup would have got a little bit more fanfare being in Navy, but another L for SIP. Grounded Jets, 2-1 start to the season. His second win here with a 267 to 229 against Vito Nader Supreme, aka Kevin G. Shout out to Robert Sellers for that victory. Negus in Perdition got his first win of the year, 227 to 226 over Cacafuego, a 1-point win. And I remember Chris saying something in the chat about that loss. I forget what it was or what game it was that led to it. I think it was one of the later games in week 2 that led to that 1-point loss. But still solid records for both owners. And then D. Will got his win, 237 to 224 against the Suicide Squad, a.k.a. Larry Edwards. Had Marvin Harrison Jr. pop out and show ninjas. And Aiden Hutchinson had a 5-sack game, according to ESPN. Even though I think he only had 4 sacks. He might have had like two half sacks that they put together. Week 3. I took another loss. Shocker. This is the one I mentioned earlier to Will Schaefer, a.k.a. Big Balls, 1988. 280 to 134, just for confirmation. That was how I lost. And I didn't have none of my offense show up. I had CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, who gave me double digits at least. Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, and I had Kirk Cousins start. Nothing from my offense. I already said I didn't get nothing from my running back, so you don't have to worry about me mentioning them. But to not get nothing is different than to put up 134 is its own territory. That's probably the worst score I've ever put up in fantasy football, contextually. Like, based on scoring standards, whatever the scoring standards are. That's probably the worst performance I've ever put up. And there's not really nothing I can do about it. I can't overhaul my roster by trading. It's got to really just wash the wire. I retooled my safety room to get my DBs better. I only really got 2 starting linebackers, and they was my 2 highest scorers this past week. Logan Wilson and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, 16 and 14.5 points respectively. So it's going to be a long season for me over here. But I'm going to do my best. Kudos to Will for a very quality win. Kyron Williams gave him 30.6 points. Chuba Hubbard, 27. Amari Cooper got 2 touchdowns for 24 points. So good win for you, Will. Harrison got the win against CJ, 252 to 226, to get his only win of the year and to give CJ his first loss, on the heels of a 43-point performance from Juwan Jennings and having Zach Charbonnet give him 28.2 points. Very strong performances from unlikely contributors to give Harrison the upset. Well deserved. Good scores from both of y'all. Great score from you, Harrison. Dan's driven team continued his undefeated streak, 226 to 198. Fortunate matchup with one of Dan's lower scores. Well, no, Dan had a low score week 1, right? Dan's score week 1 was not impressive. It was like a 218, right? If I'm not mistaken. Dan's driven team. Yep. 218, 283, 226. So Dan is I would submit that Dan has had a very fortunate start to the season. He's had 2 opponents that haven't put up 200 points. And he's had 2 weeks against those opponents where he didn't put up 230 points. And yet he's undefeated. Not as scared of your team as I originally thought I should be. That's encouraging. Your division can be had, in other words. Unless your other division mates are outscoring you. Because Will Schaefer is number 2 in the league in scoring, but he's second in the division. And number 1 in the league in scoring is not his division leader. So you might be in some trouble, Dan. Now, you did have the 1-280 something game to boost your total scoring. You're number 4 in the league in scoring right now. I don't know how you're number 4 in the league in scoring. I think just the scores have just not been great over here in general. If you're number 4 in the league in scoring, yeah, interesting. Let me keep going. He got that win. BTK2 Proxies took the L against Cortez Jackson, aka Dreams and Nightmares, 230 to 174.18. Not a good showing from Black Rob in this matchup. 2 rivalry matchups between these 2 owners in 2 different leagues. Tez also defeated Black Rob and Ray this week in week 3, and then picked up a win against Black Rob in Navy. One of the best rivalries in the history of Retroactive. On the heels of one of Black Rob's most noteworthy players, Josh Allen, being drafted by Cortez in spite, and then beating Black Rob with Josh Allen. So I know that has to suck. I got Josh Allen in rap because Black Rob left him on the board because he didn't believe in him. So I said, well, I'll believe. I'll be the one to believe. And I think that happened in Navy as well with Tez. The Grounded Jets, a.k.a. Robert Sellers, got the win, 254 to 215 over F Around and Find Out, a.k.a. SIP. Moved Robert to 2-1. Great performance from Jonathan Taylor, 28 points. And DK Metcalf went for 25.4 to give Robert the boost. The only win of the season for Kevin thus far came in a really good matchup, the matchup of the week in Navy against the Bells Battalion, aka Janine Truesdale, 267 to 256. First loss of the season for Janine and the first win of the season for Kevin. Really good matchup. Came down to the Monday night game in which Jaden Daniels arrived. I have him in another league that I'm very excited about. And I was very high on him all off season. How he kept falling in the draft compared to the other guy up in Chicago, I don't know. But I think he showed and proved who he was on Monday night against the Bengals. 32 points from him was the difference in this matchup. Negus and Perdition got his second win. A 1-point victory. Albeit 1 point, I still would give the previous match of the week. But this matchup was coming down to the wire as well. And it was against a 0-2 opponent who had an equally bad score. 202 to 201 for the Quiet One over Suicide Squad, a.k.a. Larry Edwards, to keep Larry at 0-4. Currently 0-3. And finally, Mr. Cacafuego, 283 to 213 over David's Dangerous Team to give D-Will his first loss of the year. Really bad score. Still a young season. It's going to be interesting to see how the records and how the performances and how the divisions and the owners pan out, being that we cannot trade. People have been going to the wire. Some people have already spent the majority of, if not all of their fab. And we still got 10 weeks left of the regular season. So thank you to everybody who has joined Retroactive for the first time. Everybody who's been a veteran of Retroactive in seasons past. Everybody who wanted to give the No Trade League a try and see what it's all about, or to make it what it's going to be about. We're going to see how these records change, what the trends are, how players' performances go. In future weeks, I'll get more into those weeds with these league reviews, and I'll come up with some kind of name for Retroactive Navy. I know, like I said, a rap recap, rate, review, ran, rerun. I don't know. I'll come up with something. Or maybe not. We'll see. But I appreciate y'all for joining this league. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, doubts, fears, prayer requests, thoughts, anything that you want to share with me, your commissioner, anything fantasy related, Discord, DM, or Facebook Messenger for anything fantasy related. Anything personal, holla at me. You get my phone number, call, or text. Anything fantasy related, I would prefer to remain on Discord or Facebook Messenger. All right? Keep my personal conversations to my personal phone number. All right? Love y'all. Hope everything's going well with you this week, this month, this season, you and yours, and that the week continues to go well for you as well. And I will see y'all next week. Peace.